On my wedding day, I overheard one of my husband's coworkers ask him why he was really going through with it. He didn't mean the wedding. He meant me. I was standing in the hallway outside the reception room, holding my shoes in one hand because my feet were already hurting, when I heard a man laugh. "You're seriously doing this?" There was a pause. Then Daniel answered. "Doing what?" "Marrying her." My hand tightened around the shoes. The man lowered his voice. "Not enough. Come on, Daniel. You're 32. You're successful. You make good money. You could have had anyone." Another pause. Then he added, "You could have married someone. Different." Different. I knew that word. I had heard different versions of it most of my life. Sometimes people said I was unique. Sometimes unconventional. Sometimes they simply looked at the scar running across my left cheek, then quickly looked away. When I was younger, people were more direct. Ugly. Scarface. Damaged. By adulthood, they had learned better manners. They had not necessarily learned more kindness. I stood outside the door and listened. Daniel asked, "What do you actually know about Emma?" The man sounded confused. "What? What do you know about the woman I just married?" "I'm just saying." "No. Tell me." Silence. Daniel continued. "You know what she looks like. You know she works at a library. You know she doesn't come from money." His voice stayed calm. "That's about it." The man tried to laugh. "I didn't mean anything by it." "Yes, you did." Another silence. Then Daniel said something I would remember for the rest of my life. "I'm not marrying Emma despite who she is." His voice softened. "I'm marrying her because of who she is." I closed my eyes. I loved him for saying it. But if I am telling this story honestly, I also need to admit something. I believe Daniel loved me. I just wasn't sure I deserved to be loved by someone like him. Those are two very different things. 5 years later, I would walk into one of Seattle's most important art galas wearing an emerald green dress. My hair would be pulled away from my face. The scar would still be there. I would not cover it. And some of the same people who once looked at Daniel with pity for marrying me would stand in that ballroom while hundreds of strangers applauded my name. For years, I imagined that kind of moment would feel like revenge. It didn't. Because by the time it happened, I had finally learned something more important than proving them wrong. I had learned that their opinion had never been the thing that made me valuable. My name is Emma Collins Carter. And it took me almost 35 years to understand that. I was 28 when I met Daniel. At the time, I worked at the Seattle Public Library. I loved books. I loved quiet places. I loved Children's Reading Hour, and the elderly people who came in every Tuesday and somehow forgot how to use the printer between visits. I wasn't ambitious in the way people usually mean when they use that word. I didn't dream about becoming rich. I didn't want a luxury car. I didn't care about designer clothes. I wanted a life that felt peaceful. Maybe that was because my childhood had not been. My father disappeared when I was young. My mother struggled for years before she died when I was 12. My grandmother Evelyn raised me. She was already in her late 50s when I moved in with her permanently. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office. She had very little money, but she made our small apartment feel safe. When I was 9, I had a bicycle accident. I was riding too fast down a hill near our apartment when my front tire hit a broken section of pavement. I went over the handlebars. My face hit the edge of a concrete planter. 22 stitches. The scar ran diagonally across my left cheek. At first, doctors told us it would fade. It did. But it never disappeared. Children noticed immediately. For almost 2 years, some of them called me Scarface. One boy told me I looked like someone had tried to cut my face in half. Another asked whether my mother still loved me after I became ugly. I remember that question more clearly than I remember the accident. One afternoon, Evelyn found me crying in the bathroom. I wouldn't open the door. She sat on the floor outside. "Emma? What? You know what I see when I look at you?" I didn't answer. A girl who survived flying over the handlebars of a bicycle and hitting concrete. I didn't fly. You did in my version. Despite myself, I laughed. Then she said, "And I see my beautiful granddaughter." "Grandma." "What?" "I'm not beautiful." There was a long silence. Then Evelyn said, "Who told you that?" I knew the names. I didn't say them. She continued, "Don't let people who haven't earned a place in your life decide how you see yourself." I wish I could tell you those words fixed everything. They didn't. Words rarely do. Not immediately. By high school, I learned how to arrange my hair over my left cheek. I learned which side of my face looked better in photographs. I learned how to stand when someone took a group picture. I learned to laugh when people asked rude questions. And I learned to pretend none of it bothered me. The scar itself was not severe. That almost made the reactions harder to explain. But it wasn't only the scar. I was ordinary. Average height. Brown hair. Simple clothes. No wealthy family. No impressive connections. I preferred libraries to parties. I worked a modest job. And in certain circles, being ordinary can be treated like a personal failure. Daniel came from one of those circles. Not because he was cruel. Because many of the people around him measured success differently. His friends worked in technology, finance, medicine. His older sister Rachel married a real estate developer. Their dinner conversations involved investment properties, promotions, vacations in Europe. I bought most of my clothes on sale and still called my grandmother before making purchases over $200. Daniel didn't care. But other people did. The first time I saw him, I was helping a little boy pick up books he had knocked off a display. Daniel crouched and helped. The boy looked terrified. "I'm sorry." I smiled. "It's okay. Books survive falling better than people do." Daniel laughed. Later, he checked out a novel. He returned 3 days later. The ending was terrible. I looked at the book. "You finished this in 3 days?" He hesitated. "No." "So how do you know the ending was terrible?" "I don't." I stared. He smiled. I needed an excuse to come back. I laughed. That was the beginning. For several weeks, he visited the library more often than any software engineer reasonably needed to. Eventually, he asked me to dinner. I almost said no. Not because I didn't like him. Because I did. Too much. I called Evelyn. He asked me out. "So go." "He's different." "Different how?" "He has a good job." "You have a job." "He makes a lot more money." "Most people make more money than librarians." "Grandma." She laughed. "Do you like him?" "Yes." "Does he seem kind?" "Yes." "Then have dinner." "It's not that simple." "It usually is until fear gets involved." I went. 3 months later, Daniel met Evelyn. She made pot roast. It was overcooked. She knew it. We all pretended otherwise. Halfway through dinner, she put down her fork. "Daniel." "Yes, ma'am." "What do you love about my granddaughter?" I nearly choked. "Grandma." "What?" "You can't ask people that." I just did. Daniel looked at me. Then at Evelyn. He didn't give a romantic answer. He said, "She makes people feel seen." Evelyn studied him. Then nodded. "Good." She pointed her fork at him. "Make sure she knows you see her too." Daniel smiled. "I will." For a while, I believed that would be enough. Just the two of us. Then other people began entering our relationship. Rachel was first. Daniel showed her a photograph of me. Later, he told me she had said, "You can do better." I laughed when he told me. At least I tried. "What did you say?" "That I already found the person I want." That was smooth. I practiced it in the car. I smiled. But that night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. I pulled my hair away from my cheek. The scar was pale. Thin. Not nearly as dramatic as it had been when I was a child. I stared at it anyway. A week later, Daniel went to lunch with coworkers. Someone asked to see my picture. He showed them. The table went quiet. One man laughed. Another asked whether Daniel was serious. A woman said, "Well, personality matters." Daniel came to my apartment that evening angry. I could tell immediately. "What happened?" "Nothing. You're a terrible liar." He told me. I listened. Then looked out the window. "I'm used to it." Daniel went silent. "What?" I said I'm used to it. "That doesn't make it okay." "I know." "Then why are you acting like it doesn't matter?" Because admitting it mattered meant admitting strangers still had power over me. I didn't know how to explain that. Instead, I said, "They don't know me." Daniel took my hand. "Exactly. Maybe they never will." I thought that was the problem. I didn't understand yet that not everyone needed to. 6 months later, Daniel proposed. No expensive restaurant. No photographers. Just the two of us sitting on a beach eating sandwiches at sunset. He dropped the ring box in the sand. I laughed. He looked horrified. "This was supposed to be romantic." "It is. There's sand in the box. That makes it memorable." He wiped it off. "The ring isn't perfect. I don't need a perfect ring." I don't have a perfect life. I don't want one. He looked at me. Emma Collins, will you marry me? Yes. The happiness lasted until we told everyone. Rachel offered to organize our engagement dinner. I thought she was trying to accept me. Maybe she was. But acceptance without respect doesn't feel much like acceptance. The restaurant was expensive. I wore a navy dress I bought on sale. Daniel told me I looked beautiful. When we reached the table, Rachel smiled politely. His uncle spent 20 minutes asking Daniel about work without once asking me a question. A cousin stared at my cheek. Finally, he said, "What happened to your face?" The table became quiet. Bicycle accident. How old were you? 9. He nodded. That's unfortunate. Then returned to his dinner. I lowered my eyes. Later, I stepped outside to answer a call from Evelyn. When I came back, Rachel and Daniel were talking. They didn't see me. You still have time to change your mind. Daniel started at her. What? Marriage is forever. So? Rachel sighed. You know what I mean. No. Say it. You could have someone who fits your life better. Daniel's voice hardened. Emma fits my life. You know people talk. So? I'm trying to protect you. No. He shook his head. You're trying to protect your image. I walked away before either saw me. On the drive home, Daniel apologized. For what? My family. They don't owe me kindness. Yes, they do. I looked out the window. I've spent my whole life waiting for people to choose kindness. He said nothing. I stopped expecting it. 1 month before our wedding, I lost the job I loved. Technically, I resigned. But sometimes people can push you out without firing you. The library had hired a new branch manager. He wanted a more modern image. New uniforms. New signage. New front desk standards. One afternoon, he asked me into his office. You're one of our strongest employees. I relaxed. Then he continued. We'd like to move you into back office coordination. Why? It's a good opportunity. I like working with visitors. I know. Then why move me? He began talking about presentation, customer comfort, visual consistency. I knew where the conversation was going. Are you saying I'm not presentable? He smiled. No one said that. You didn't have to. He looked uncomfortable. Emma, please don't make this personal. I almost laughed. It was my face. How could it not be personal? I resigned 2 days later. Daniel wanted me to complain formally. I refused. At the time, I told him I didn't want those people controlling my energy. That was partly true. The rest was exhaustion. I had spent almost 20 years defending myself. I didn't want another battle. We married anyway. The wedding was small. Evelyn sat in the front row. Daniel cried before I did. Rachel attended. So did several coworkers. During the reception, I overheard the conversation I told you about at the beginning. You could have married someone different. Daniel defended me. Again. That night, after almost everyone left, I sat barefoot on the edge of the stage. Daniel joined me. My feet are killing me. Worth it? I smiled. Yes. Then the old fear returned. Daniel? Yeah? What if they're right? Who? Everyone. He frowned. What if one day you wake up and realize you deserve someone prettier? Emma. Someone your family is proud to introduce. Emma. Someone who doesn't make people ask why you married her. He took my hands. The day I stop choosing you will be the day I stop being myself. I cried. I believed him. But I still needed him to say it. That was the problem. At the beginning of our marriage, Daniel's love acted like a shield between me and every ugly thing I believed about myself. Eventually, I would have to learn to put the shield down. 3 months after the wedding, Evelyn went into the hospital. The call came at 6:17 on a Monday morning. We drove through heavy rain. I barely spoke. When I entered her room, she smiled. There's my beautiful girl. Even at 80, sick and exhausted, she said it exactly the way she always had. I sat beside her. We talked for an hour. Old stories. Childhood. Daniel. Then she asked Daniel to step outside. When the door closed, she looked at me. Are you happy? Yes. Really? Yes. She smiled. Good. Then she asked. Are you painting? I looked away. No. Why? I'm busy. Liar. I laughed. When I was younger, I painted constantly. Faces. Hints. People sitting on buses. children reading, old couples holding hands. I stopped during college. Then life happened. Work, bills, responsibilities. The paints went into boxes. I'm not an artist. Evelyn rolled her eyes. Good. What? Artists are exhausting. I laughed again. Then she squeezed my hand. But you see people differently. I went quiet. Daniel told me something once. What? He said you make people feel seen. Tears filled my eyes. Evelyn continued. Maybe you should let people see what you see. A week later, she died. The funeral was small. After everyone left, I stood beside her grave. Daniel put his arm around me. I feel alone. You're not. I know. But grief doesn't always listen to facts. For months, I stopped being myself. I slept badly. I stopped reading. Stopped cooking. Stopped returning friends' messages. Some evenings, I sat on our balcony until it became dark. Daniel never told me to move on. I loved him for that. One night, I opened a box in the closet. Inside was an old sketchbook. Daniel found me sitting on the floor, looking through it. He sat beside me. What's that? Nothing. He took the sketchbook. A portrait of Evelyn. Children. People from buses. A couple holding hands. He stared. You did these? Yes. Emma. What? These are incredible. They're old. So? They're not good enough. He looked at me. According to who? I didn't answer. He placed the sketchbook back in my hands. These deserve to be seen. I'm not ready. Okay. That surprised me. You're not going to push? No. Why? He smiled. Because believing in you doesn't mean deciding for you. 3 weeks later, I posted one portrait online. Evain. It received 17 likes. 17. Not thousands. No overnight miracle. But one comment stopped me. This feels like someone I miss. Then a woman messaged. She wanted to buy it. I thought it was a scam. Daniel checked. It wasn't. She offered $180. When the payment arrived, I stared at the screen. Someone paid me for a painting. Daniel smiled. Yes. Why? Because she wanted it. But why? He laughed. Emma, you're making this much more complicated than necessary. I cried. That was year 1. I did not become successful. I started painting. There's a difference. I bought inexpensive canvases. Worked at the dining table. Some nights I painted for 3 hours. Some weeks I didn't touch a brush. I applied to a community exhibition. Rejected. Another. Rejected. A cafe agreed to hang 3 paintings. 1 sold. 2 came home. I stared at the unsold canvases in our hallway. Maybe I'm wasting my time. Daniel picked up a hammer. What are you doing? Hanging them. Why? Because they're still paintings. They didn't sell. That doesn't make them failures. He hung both. I kept painting. During year 2, I found part-time work doing administrative support for a nonprofit. It paid the bills. Barely. I painted before work. After work. Weekends. I applied to 7 exhibitions. 5 rejected me. 1 never responded. 1 accepted 2 paintings. The exhibition was held in a small community center. For the first hour, nobody stopped at my wall. I stood beside Daniel. This was a mistake. No. People aren't even looking. Give them time. An elderly woman eventually stopped. She stared at a portrait of an older couple sitting on a park bench. After several minutes, she turned to me. Did you paint this? Yes. She wiped her eye. It reminds me of my husband. I'm sorry. He died 2 years ago. She looked back at the painting. Can I buy it? That sale meant more than the money. For the first time, I understood that what I painted could connect with someone I had never met. A few months later, a small gallery in Tacoma offered me a 6-month agreement. Daniel read the contract. His face tightened. The commission is high. I know. And this exclusivity clause. It's 6 months. I don't like it. You don't have to. He looked surprised. Emma, I work with contracts. You work with software contracts. A bad deal is a bad deal. I felt something old rise inside me. Not because Daniel was trying to hurt me. Because suddenly, someone else was telling me what decision I should make. I'm signing it. I think you should wait. Why? Because they could take advantage of you. I understand the contract. I didn't say you didn't. You're acting like it. I'm trying to protect you. I froze. Rachel had said those exact words. The library manager had used different ones. People often call control protection when they believe their intentions are good. Daniel. He stopped. You believed in me when nobody else did. I still do. Then trust me. I do. No. I shook my head. Believing in me means trusting me enough to make my own decisions. I'm your husband. Exactly. I looked at him. Not my manager. He went quiet. We slept facing opposite directions that night. The next morning, I found coffee beside my easel. A note underneath. You're right. I signed the contract. It wasn't a great contract. Daniel was correct about that. The commission hurt. I made mistakes. But I learned. When the 6 months ended, I negotiated differently. That lesson belonged to me because the mistake had belonged to me. Daniel apologized. I did the thing. What thing? Protector becoming controller. A little. I'm sorry. I kissed him. You're learning. So are you. That argument changed our marriage. Not because we stopped disagreeing. Because Daniel learned that supporting me did not mean standing in front of me every time something difficult approached. And I learned that disagreement did not automatically mean rejection. Year 3 was when my work changed. Until then, I had painted people beautifully. Not glamorous. But carefully. I softened wrinkles. Avoided scars. Made everyone look slightly kinder than life had made them. Then one afternoon, a woman named Teresa sat for me. She was 53. She had survived thyroid cancer. A long surgical scar ran across her neck. While we discussed the portrait, she said, "Can you hide this?" She touched the scar. I knew exactly what she meant. I had spent decades asking the same thing without saying it. I asked, "Do you want me to?" She hesitated. "My daughter says I shouldn't. I'm asking you." Teresa looked at herself in the mirror. Then shook her head. "No. I painted the scar. Not dramatically. Honestly." When Teresa saw the finished portrait, she cried. "I look like me." That sentence changed my work. I started painting people the way life had actually touched them. Wrinkles. Burn marks. Surgical scars. Hearing aids. Gray hair. Hands twisted by arthritis. Stretch marks. A teenager with a birthmark covering part of her forehead. An elderly man using oxygen. Some viewers loved the paintings. Others said they were uncomfortable. One gallery rejected the entire series. People don't necessarily want to confront imperfection when buying art for their homes. I sat in my car afterward and cried. Then I went home, looked at the rejection email again, and painted. The following month, a community arts center invited me to speak. 30 people attended. My hands shook. Afterward, a woman approached. She had a surgical scar along her neck. "I've spent 4 years asking photographers to remove this." She touched it. "Your work made me wonder why." I sat in my car afterward and cried again. Different reason. Year 3 was also when Rachel came to our house for Christmas. Our relationship remained polite. She looked around my small studio. "You're still painting?" "Yes. That's nice." Nice. I hated that word. She noticed one portrait. A woman with a burn scar across her shoulder. "People buy these?" I looked at her. "Yes." She seemed surprised. "Why?" Daniel entered the room. "Rachel." I raised my hand. "No." He stopped. I answered myself. "Because some people want art that looks like real life." Rachel nodded awkwardly. "I didn't mean anything." "I know." That was the first time I realized I no longer needed Daniel to defend me every time. It felt strange. And good. During year 4, a regional gallery offered to represent me. The contract was better. I negotiated it myself. Then asked Daniel to review it afterward. He smiled. "Look at you. Don't be annoying." I'm proud. My art income slowly became larger than my administrative salary. Not every month. But enough. I quit the nonprofit job. Daniel bought a grocery store cake. The bakery wrote, "Full-time art person." Across the top. I stared. "You paid money for this?" $8. It looks like a child decorated it. The child has excellent handwriting. We ate half of it standing at the kitchen counter. Success didn't arrive like fireworks. It arrived like that. Small sales. Emails. Rejections. Better sales. A collector recommending me to another collector. A magazine requesting an interview. A gallery calling back instead of me calling them. My work appeared in a Seattle arts magazine. The article was titled, "The Faces We Learn to Hide." The photographer asked which side I preferred. My automatic answer almost came out. Right side. Then I stopped. Either. He looked at me. You sure? I touched my left cheek. Yes? The photograph showed my scar clearly. When the magazine arrived, I stared at it. For years, I had turned my face away from cameras. Now, thousands of people could see the thing I had spent half my life hiding. I waited for panic. It came. A little. Then it passed. Progress isn't always the disappearance of fear. Sometimes it is discovering fear no longer controls what happens next. Rachel saw the article. She texted Daniel. Emma's doing really well. He showed me. That's nice. You want me to respond? No. And I meant it. Something else happened that year. A young woman named Maya emailed me. She was 19. A fire when she was a child had left scars across one side of her face and neck. She wrote, "I saw your portrait in the magazine. Then I saw your photograph. I noticed your scar. Thank you for not editing it." I read that message 3 times. Then I went into the bathroom. I looked at my reflection. The scar that had made me feel less beautiful for most of my life had just made another person feel less alone. I sat on the floor and cried. If Evelyn had been alive, she would have told me she had been right. I could practically hear her. Year 5 began with an email I almost deleted. Pacific Northwest Contemporary Art Gala. I assumed it was promotional. Then I saw my name. Featured emerging artist. I called Daniel. There's been a mistake. What happened? I read the email. He was silent. Daniel? I'm trying not to say I told you so. Don't. You earned it. There are hundreds of artists better than me. That's irrelevant. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. He laughed. They invited you. 6 weeks later, I bought an emerald green dress. Not on sale. That was a first. The afternoon of the gala, I stood in front of the mirror. For years, I had worn my hair, so it fell partly across my left cheek. That night, I pulled it back. Daniel entered. Stopped. You didn't cover it. I looked at him through the mirror. The scar? Yeah. No. He came closer. Are you sure? I touched my cheek. For the first time in my life? I smiled. Yes. The ballroom was enormous. Soft lighting. Champagne. Collectors. Artists. Photographers. My paintings hung along one wall. I saw people stopping. Talking. Moving closer. Some stayed for several minutes. Others walked past. And for the first time, I didn't interpret every person who walked away as rejection. A woman approached. Emma Collins Carter? Yes. Olivia Bennett. I knew the name. She owned galleries in Seattle and Portland. I've been following your work for about a year. I almost looked behind me. Mine? She smiled. Yours. She wanted a meeting. Not a magical contract. Not instant fame. A meeting about representing my work nationally. That was enough. Then I saw Rachel. She stood across the room, staring at one of my paintings. A portrait of a woman with a long scar across her abdomen after multiple surgeries. Rachel turned. Saw me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she approached. Emma. Rachel. You look. She stopped. I almost smiled. Careful. She laughed nervously. You look happy. I am. She looked toward the paintings. These are incredible. Thank you. Silence. Then Rachel said, I owe you an apology. I waited. I judged you. Yes. She swallowed. Before I knew anything about you. Yes. I told myself I was protecting Daniel. I remember. Her eyes filled. But I was protecting my own pride. That was new. I had this idea of the kind of woman my brother should marry. She looked down. And because you didn't fit that picture, I decided something was wrong with you. I said nothing. I'm sorry. I believed her. But believing an apology does not require pretending the wound never happened. Thank you. She looked surprised. That's it? What were you expecting? I don't know. Then she said quietly, I don't expect forgiveness. I forgive you. Relief appeared on her face. I continued. But forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing. She went still. If you want a relationship with me, we can build one. Slowly? Yes. She nodded. That's fair. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. Some relationships are repaired by dramatic moments. Others are repaired by ordinary lunches 6 months later. Rachel and I would eventually have those lunches. But not yet. Later that evening, the host walked onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for this year's People's Choice Award." Daniel squeezed my hand. "I'm not winning." He smiled. "Probably not." I hit his arm. "Great husband. I'm managing expectations." The presenter opened the envelope. "The winner is..." I prepared to applaud. "Emma Collins Carter." I didn't move. Daniel leaned toward me. "Emma? What?" "They said your name." People were applauding. I looked around. Olivia Bennet was standing. Rachel was clapping. People I had never met were smiling. Daniel kissed my cheek. "Go." I walked toward the stage. The award felt heavy. The microphone felt heavier. I had no speech prepared. So I told the truth. When I was 9 years old, I had an accident. The room quieted. It left a scar on my face. I paused. For years, I thought the scar was the first thing people saw. I looked across the ballroom. Sometimes it was. A few people laughed softly. But eventually, the bigger problem wasn't what other people saw. I swallowed. It was that I had started seeing myself through their eyes. Daniel watched me. When I was younger, I thought being different meant I would never fully belong. I looked toward my paintings. I spent years hiding parts of myself. Then I looked back at the audience. My husband believed in me long before I knew how to believe in myself. Daniel's eyes filled. And I will always be grateful for that. I paused. But I learned something over these last 5 years. The room became completely quiet. Someone else can believe in you. They can encourage you. They can defend you. They can love you. But eventually, I took a breath. You have to decide whether you believe you are worth showing up for. I touched my cheek. Not intentionally. My hand simply went there. This award means a lot to me. But the greatest thing that happened to me wasn't becoming an artist. It wasn't selling paintings. It wasn't being invited here. I smiled. It was the day I stopped trying to disappear. Applause began. I continued. To anyone who has ever been told that something about your body, your background, your age, your scars, or your circumstances makes you less worthy of being seen. I paused. You are not a before picture. The room became silent again. You are not waiting to become worthy. Then the applause came. Loud. Loud. I looked at Daniel. He was crying. I smiled. Afterward, reporters approached. Collectors. Artists. People asking questions. Then I saw someone I recognized. The coworker from our wedding. The man who had asked Daniel why he was really going through with it. He looked older. So did I. He approached slowly. Emma. He. Congratulations. Thank you. He looked at Daniel. Then back at me. I said some things years ago. I waited. I was wrong. There had been a time when I fantasized about this moment. I imagined delivering the perfect response. Something sharp. Something that would make him feel small. Standing there, I didn't want that anymore. Yes. I nodded. You were. He looked surprised. I smiled politely. Then walked away. That was enough. 5 years earlier, people couldn't believe Daniel married me. Now some of them couldn't believe they had underestimated me. But their regret did not heal me. The applause didn't erase childhood. The award didn't change what happened at the library. Success did not travel backward in time and protect the girl crying behind a bathroom door. And it did not need to. That was something else I had learned. Healing is not rewriting the past. It is reaching a point where the past no longer gets to write the rest of your story. A week after the gala, Daniel and I sat at our kitchen table eating takeout. The award was still on the counter. You need to put that somewhere. Where? I don't know. You're the decorator. I'm an artist, not an interior designer. He laughed. Then looked at me. Do you feel different? Yes. How? I thought about it. I expected winning to feel like revenge. Does it? No. Disappointed? I smiled. No. What does it feel like? I looked around our kitchen. Paint on one cabinet handle. A pile of mail. Daniel's laptop. 2 cartons of noodles. My grandmother's portrait hanging near the doorway. This. What? My life. He frowned. I don't understand. I thought everyone being wrong about me would finally make me feel right about myself. And? It didn't. I reached across the table. I already felt right before they announced my name. Daniel smiled. That sounds expensive. What? Years of therapy probably could have gotten you there faster. I laughed so hard, I almost dropped my fork. A few days later, I visited Evelyn's grave. I brought the award, which felt ridiculous. I put it beside the headstone. You were right. Wind moved through the trees. I know you're enjoying that. I sat on the grass. I'm painting. My voice broke. And people see it. Then I looked at her name carved into stone. I stopped hiding, Grandma. That was the sentence that made me cry. Not, I won. Not, I became successful. I stopped hiding. Rachel kept her promise. She didn't demand closeness. 3 months later, she asked if I wanted coffee. I went. We talked for an hour. Not about the past. Work. Danielle. Her children. Art. Before leaving, she said, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for asking." 6 months later, she came to another exhibition. She stood beside one painting for a long time. Then asked, "What do you see when you paint someone?" I thought about it. What they're trying not to show. Rachel nodded. That sounds terrifying. It is. She smiled. Our relationship never became perfect. It became real. That was better. My career continued. Not every show sold out. Some paintings failed. One critic described a series as overly sentimental. I was upset for an entire afternoon. Then Daniel asked, "You quitting?" "No." "Good." The next morning, I painted. That is probably the biggest difference between who I was and who I became. Criticism still hurts. Rejection still hurts. A cruel comment can still find the exact bruise you thought had healed. I'm human. But pain stopped becoming instruction. I stopped assuming every rejection contained truth. Olivia eventually represented me. My work appeared in galleries outside Washington. I earned more money. Not millions. Enough. More importantly, I started working with community organizations that used art programs for teenagers dealing with visible differences, illness, injuries, and trauma. One afternoon, Maya, the 19-year-old who had emailed me after seeing my scar in the magazine, came to a workshop. I recognized her immediately. She stood near the doorway. Half of her face and neck carried burn scars. She looked terrified. I walked over. "Maya?" She nodded. "You remembered." "Of course." She touched her neck unconsciously. "I almost didn't come. I almost didn't become an artist." She laughed. We sat together. At the end of the workshop, Maya painted a self-portrait. She included every scar. When she finished, she stared at it. Then whispered, "I look strong." I thought about Evelyn, a girl who survived hitting concrete and got back on a bicycle. Maybe that was what she had been trying to teach me all along. People sometimes ask whether Daniel saved me. I understand why. It makes a good story. Successful man sees value in rejected woman. He loves her. She becomes successful. Everyone regrets judging her. But that isn't what happened. Daniel did not save me. He loved me. There is a difference. He gave me safety. Encouragement. Space. Sometimes he defended me. Sometimes he defended me when I didn't need defending. Sometimes he got it wrong. So did I. The healthiest thing Daniel ever did was not telling me I was beautiful. It was learning when to stop speaking for me. And the healthiest thing I ever did was stop needing him to convince me that I deserved the life we had. One evening, years after our wedding, I found our wedding album. I opened it. There I was. 29. Hair carefully positioned over my left cheek in almost every photograph. I studied that woman. I didn't feel embarrassed. I felt tenderness. She was doing the best she knew how to do. Daniel said beside me, "You okay?" "Yes." I pointed at one picture. "Look." "What?" "My hair." He studied it. "Oh." I was hiding. He looked at me. "You don't anymore." "No." "Good." I closed the album. My scar is still there. It is lighter now. But visible. Sometimes photographers remove it during editing. When they do, I ask them to put it back. Not because the scar defines me. It doesn't. But removing it suggests there is something wrong with the truth. There isn't. If I could speak to the 28-year-old woman sitting behind that library desk before Daniel ever checked out a book he didn't want, I would not tell her. "One day you'll become successful." I wouldn't tell her. "One day, everyone will regret judging you." And I definitely wouldn't tell her. "One day, you'll prove them wrong." I would tell her something much simpler. "Emma, you are not waiting to become worthy. Not after marriage. Not after success. Not after someone apologizes. Not after enough strangers admire your paintings. You are not a before picture. There is no future version of you who finally earns the right to be respected. For most of my life, I thought rejection meant there was something wrong with me. Sometimes it does. Sometimes we need to grow. Sometimes we need to change. But sometimes rejection tells you far more about the person doing the rejecting than it tells you about yourself. And sometimes love does not heal you by convincing you that you are beautiful. Sometimes, love gives you enough safety to eventually understand that beauty was never the question. Daniel chose me before the galleries, before the articles, before the award, before anyone thought my paintings mattered. That choice changed my life. But it was not the most important choice in this story. The most important one came years later, when I finally chose myself. If you were in my place, would you have forgiven Rachel after the way she treated me? And if someone you loved kept trying to protect you, even when you needed the freedom to make your own decisions, how would you explain the difference between support and control? Tell me what you think in the comments. I always enjoy reading how you would handle complicated relationships like these. If this story stayed with you, please like the video and share it with someone who has ever felt judged, overlooked, or made to feel that they were not enough. And subscribe to Hidden Stories for more emotional stories about family, love, rejection, forgiveness, second chances, and the truths we sometimes spend years learning about ourselves. Because the strongest answer to people who once told you that you were not enough is not becoming someone they finally admire. It is becoming someone who no longer needs their approval. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.